Um, Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm behind the time. Um, Let me stand on all existing protocols, but I'm very honored to be here. First, because of what this event that is now done annually represents. The community of Nigeria and Nigerians in action. This is a community-centered event. It's an event of the people, for the people, by the people. That's what Felabration is. Fela that we celebrate, I don't need to speak too much about the impact he had on this country. He was a great man, a man ahead of his time, both in terms of his music, which today is a worldwide phenomenon, and in terms of his political thinking. But we still have not come to his political thinking. We are just still dancing to his music. One day we will come to his political vision. We are still in search of it. But I'm always proud to be here also because of my personal connection to the family. 59 years ago, when I was born here in Lagos, my baptismal godmother was Fela's mother, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, and she gave me the name Ayodele. It's one of my names. It is symbolic of the tragic events in Nigeria. My father and my mother were in the foreign service at the time. My father was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And shortly after I was born, about 3 months after, he went on his first posting to Geneva and then to Washington, D.C. 3-4 years later, the Civil War came and broke everybody apart. And so in the 70s, when we were in the East, and my parents were telling me this story, and I said, oh, but where is that auntie? My parents said, you know, the Civil War scattered everybody. And so it's a story about Nigeria. And let me tell you one more story about Nigeria before I go to the elections. There are many truths about this country. They stand side by side. The fact that some people are agitating, they have a reason why they are agitating. It is also a fact. But it is also a fact that there is far more that binds and unites us than we realize. And therefore, that makes it true that many of the narratives that Kadria talked about, that Hakim talked about, are narratives woven by our politicians for their selfish interests. Many years ago, I lived in this town as a young graduate, working in Newswatch magazine in those days, as a lawyer and as a journalist. And I wanted to go abroad to study. And I got admission to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, one of the world's top graduate schools of international affairs. But the Naira had just been devalued in 1990. The school fees were $25,000. I could not afford it. And so I deferred the admission and started looking for money. Where did I go? Idumota. That was my natural. Where is the money? Some Igbo traders in Idumota. Perhaps they will help. I spoke to a few. Hi! Congratulations. Business is hard, you know. Congratulations. This is a very big achievement, but the business is hard. I got that about 10 times. I gave up. No help. An idea occurred to me. One man, I had admired him from when I was very young. He was the Director General of the Institute of International Affairs in the early 70s. And I had read his CV, and he was an alumnus of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, where he took his master's, and then later went to Oxford and took his PhD. His name is Bolaji Akinwande Akinyemi. And I said, I took my pen and wrote to him and said, here I am. I have an admission from your former school, and I'm looking for help. Can I come and see you? I said, big man. He probably will read the letter and throw it into the dustbin. About 2 weeks later, I got a reply. Come and see me at so and so time in my office. I took a taxi and went. I didn't have a car. Arrived at his office. I had my CV. I was prepared. You know, there are some people when you meet them in life, it's one chance. You better be prepared. One chance. I had my CV and I had a very neat dress. And he and I spoke for some time. And he looked at the CV and said, young man, you know, this is very impressive that at 27 you have achieved all this, you have an admission, but I don't have money. I cannot pay for your school fees. But there's something I will do. I will write to the school. And so he wrote to the school a short 2-paragraph letter that every time I read that letter today, I still shed tears. Powerful letter of introduction saying this man will be a future leader in Nigeria and Africa. Give him a scholarship. About 2 months later, a letter arrived from the school with a scholarship. Covering my tuition of $25,000, and I was given a fellowship with a name. It was called the John Gillespie Fellow. That's what you will be. And that's how I left the country. Because I was admitted to that school, when I wanted to go for my visa at the U.S. Embassy, they said, what? You were admitted to the Fletcher School? Don't come. Just send your papers. Don't come for interview. They stamped the visa and sent back my passport with a travel grant. That is my ticket to America. Now, this was done, all this was through somebody who was from a different part of the country. The people I first went to for help, and I thought that was whence help would come. They were not so helpful. They were only congratulating me on my achievement. So this is lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. To cut a long story short, many of you know that I was Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria from 2009 to 2014. But many people may not know how that appointment came about. It came about at a World Economic Conference. I was in the United Nations. When I finished from the Fletcher School, I joined the UN and was in the UN for 17 years, went from entry level to the highest rank. And when I finished, I felt I was still young enough to have another career. I resigned and went into business as a consultant in risk management. And as a consultant, I attended the World Economic Forum in Cape Town to speak. And there, at my table at the dinner, no prior knowledge, was a young man who was just 4 days old, having been confirmed by the Senate as the governor of the central bank. His name was Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, as of that time. Today is Muhammadu Sanusi II. And so, when I saw him and we greeted each other, in my mind I said, wow, hopefully there will be a business from this opportunity. And we thought, I gave him my brochure, and he spent most of the dinner reading the brochure. My wife kicked me under the table. I said, your friend is antisocial. He's not socializing, he's just reading your propaganda. Of course, she spoke to me in Igbo so that nobody will hear what she was saying. After some time, Sanusi closed the brochure. He said, Kingsley, I have a better idea. would you like to be deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria? I'm like, what's going on? I was looking for business. So he said, no, don't answer. Sleep on it. Tomorrow let us have lunch. The next day we had lunch for 2 hours, and he explained his vision for the bank, the banking system, and he says, this opening in the bank, there are 4 deputy governors in the bank. This particular one will lead the implementation of all the reforms I have in mind. And you fit the profile. So you can sit outside and be complaining and writing your articles in The Guardian, which I read sometimes, wonderful. Or you can come home with me and we do this thing together. And he says, I don't appoint deputy governors, the president does, appoints the governor and the deputy governor. So what I'm going to do is that I'll recommend you to Yaradua if you agree. But I know that it is whoever I recommend that he will appoint. I didn't know at that time what it meant to be a deputy governor of the central bank. I didn't know how many people were lobbying for this job. And I was there doing Yanga. And I'll ask him this question, he will answer. I'll ask him this question, he will answer. I asked him the salary. He told me some funny figure. I said, Lamido, that cannot work now. I have a mortgage in Switzerland. I own a home from my lawful employment. This salary you're calling cannot pay that mortgage. He looked at me and laughed. He said, okay, first of all, let me tell you, we'll do a reform of the salary. I know it's low. But all that is a long story. The point I'm trying to make is how I came back to the country after a long sojourn abroad to serve my country. 5 years at the bank, we did a lot of reforms under his ultimate leadership. I am grateful for that opportunity to have served this country, and I believe the record stands till today. And when I went into politics, after that service, I became a professor at the Fletcher School. Again, a great honor. While I was teaching there and I looked at Nigeria, what was going on, I wasn't happy. I said, I will run for president. I came back and went into politics. If I had touched a penny while I was deputy governor of the central bank that did not belong to me, you would have heard about it. But because I didn't, I could say whatever I liked to whoever I liked. So the point is that we are not necessarily as divided as we think we are in this country. What has happened is that we lack unifying leadership. We lack what Kaderia has identified as unity of purpose. And in 2023, we should be looking for a leader that will begin or rediscover the task of unifying this country and giving it a unity of purpose. Despite the diversity of religion or ethnic, it is possible for Nigeria to be united by something that rises above the things that divide us. That is what builds great nations. And it's called a worldview, to use a big grammar. Look at every country of the world. The United States, France, Britain, India, China. Look at every country that has been successful. Every such country has a worldview, a philosophical foundation that drives it. In the United States, where they have a lot of diversity, like in Nigeria, but anytime they quarrel, anytime there are big social issues, when people invoke the idea of America, everybody will shoot their sword. When they see the flag, they stand at attention. How is this created? It is created by two things. One, the educational system, to come back to Obilo. The educational system is the foundation of every country. That's what creates patriotism. That's what creates values. That's what gives people skills to be competitive in the world. Today, our education system has collapsed. We are not discussing the quality of education. We are discussing whether or not people are actually physically present in school. because ASU is on strike. That's what we're discussing. We're not even discussing when they go back, what are they teaching? What is the quality of the education young people are having? The educational system in Nigeria today has become the first point of contact in a long line of unemployment. You go out of school, you come out and you stand on the line. Many of them are not employable anymore. Because what we should be doing for the 21st century is to educate our children with skills. There is no country that can rise to greatness without a philosophical foundation, without respect for knowledge. We're in a knowledge society all around the world. Without respect for ideas that shape the world. In Nigeria, our electorate is part of our problem. In the 1950s and 60s, our leaders had a lot of intellectualism. Whether it was Zik, whether it was Awolowo, whether it was Sardauna or Ahmadu Bello. They were people of ideas. They were not perfect. There were issues, structural issues, ethnic issues. Some of the things the British did before they left. But at least they had ideas. And they were using those ideas in their regions to develop their regions. Today in Nigeria, when you are a politician and you are an intellectual, our citizens have been acculturated to saying, that man is a brilliant man, but he's just blowing grammar. Any group of people who think like this and express like this can never elect the kind of leaders they need. So they will get the one they deserve. They will get the leaders they deserve. And so, as we go to 2023, there are three players in view. The candidates, the voters, and INEC. These are the three players that will determine the outcome. 2023 is a watershed year in Nigerian democracy. Go and mark it. You better believe it. Because things are coming to a head. The suffering, the poverty, the insecurity. But is 2023 going to give us the opportunity to move forward in truth? Or will it be just another year in the 4-yearly recycling cycle? Where people will come with the crowds, they will speak, they will mobilize along the lines of ethnicity, along the lines of religion, along the lines of money. But we pray that money will fail in 2023. So our politicians, I'm asking our politicians, especially the presidential candidates, not to be lazy intellectually. If you look at all of them, they're all educated people. But what happens in Nigeria is that when you enter politics, the political culture dumbs you down. If you're educated and seen as refined, you might begin to look like a fish out of water. So you go down. You make yourself subhuman. But thinking is more important than we think. And any group of people that refuses to think will never make progress. There is a difference between existing and thriving. In Nigeria, we like to quote unquote to manage. How are you? We are managing. How about they? We they manage. A former head of state I spoke with some time ago on his birthday. And he said, Kingsley, how are you? I said, Your Excellency, body the inside cloth. And he almost dropped the phone laughing. So, this is how we have become. But 2023 should be the year when we begin to walk back from disaster. We need to find that leader who can lead the difficult conversations we must all have in this country. We avoid telling ourselves the truth. We talk about unity. Some people are talking about unity and you're watching their action. They'll come tell you unity, unity. You, Oduduwa, you, Biafrans. We won't tolerate this nonsense. The unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable. Meanwhile, all the parastatals are filled with his or her ethnic compatriots. They're telling you about unity. And they're blaming those who are agitating. The task of leadership is to engage in difficult questions. Nigeria is not working because we have walked away from the original consensus. What was that consensus? It was formed between 1947 and 1951. That we're a big country of diverse people, and what will work for us, because we don't want anyone or any part of the country to dominate the other. What we want is federalism. Who was in agreement with this consensus and who was opposed? The Sadana was in agreement, Ahmadu Bello. Awolowo was in agreement, Ahmadu Bello. Who was in opposition? Zik. Zik did not agree. He did not believe in federalism. He wanted a unitary state because he felt in his own mind that that would bring people closer together in his mind. The others made very strong arguments to him. Eventually, he came around to that consensus. So the three of them agreed. That was the basis of the McPherson Constitution. Period. And that was the basis on which the 1960 Constitution of Nigeria made Nigeria a federal state. It's not an accident that the United States is a federation. It's not an accident that Australia, Germany, you name it, Brazil, big countries, India, with diverse populations. It's not an accident that they use a federal system of government, where power is devolved down to people and people can take charge of their destiny. And respect for the idea of being one country is represented in the fact that everybody will answer, we are Nigerians. And the federal government will be in charge of foreign affairs, in charge of defense and the armed forces, in charge of the central bank, in charge of immigration. 6, 7, 8 items that are universal to everybody that belongs to a country. The rest should go down to the local levels. But no, we discovered oil. That was one. But even before then, or after that, the military came and broke the consensus. And like somebody pointed out, who broke it? Ironsi. The problem in this country is that we don't like to tell ourselves the truth. We all want to be victims. But we don't understand that the crisis in this country, we have all hurt one another. Let us start from that basis. If we start from that basis, we can heal. But instead, the narrative of our politics and the narrative of Nigeria, everybody wants to show how they are victims and the other people are villains. You don't make peace that way. I have been in the United Nations. I've been a peacemaker, a peace builder. And I know how to create a consensus to build a nation that has been broken by war and conflict. I did it in Rwanda. I did it in Croatia. I did it in Cambodia. I know what it means. And so when you are electing a president in 2023, let me conclude by saying something that might be a little bit controversial, but a fact. There are 4 functions of a president. The reason we have been making mistakes in elections is that we do not even know what the presidency itself, it's a job, just like any other job. It's not just a political promotion that you earn because you have been a governor, because you have been a senator, no matter your record. You are entitled to run for president. But Chiedu Moralo has not yet been elected governor or senate, so why should he aspire to be president? For as long as we're thinking like this, we're going nowhere. There are 4 functions. Number 1, national security. Number 2, nation building. Who can put Nigeria back together? Some people are putting the emphasis on their ability to unify the country when they are seeking power. We should hold their feet to the fire. Tell us exactly how. Tell us what you will do. Not to come and tell us I'm this, I'm that. When you get in there, same old story. Sometimes you even look at what is happening now and you begin to wonder. You are tested now to practice that thing you're telling us. And we're watching. So, national security, nation building, which means unifying the country that is diverse and giving us unity of purpose as one nation. Moving Nigeria from country to nation. And then the other meaning of nation building that people don't understand is building institutions that are strong and independent and effective. You cannot have democracy without two things. One, an enlightened, empowered citizenry that knows the issues that need to be dealt with and knows and should assess candidates according to those issues. If you don't have that, you don't have a democracy. So since we don't have that, let us tell ourselves the truth, that at best we are a semi-democracy. Number two, you cannot have a democracy without independent institutions that uphold the rule of law. We don't increasingly have that in Nigeria today. We are hoping that INEC will show itself in 2023 an independent institution. In truth and in fact, we watch, we wait, we pray. So the third requirement of the office of the president is managing the national economy. And the fourth is foreign affairs. Four things. It doesn't go beyond. If you go and look at what the president does every day, it will come into one of these four things. But how many citizens understand what I've just said? No. The man has money. He has entourage. He has money. He has structure. That's why I think I should vote for him to be president. He is likely to win. Likely. So people vote for who they think are likely in their mind to win. They don't ask, if he wins, how will this change my life? No. They just want to be part of a bandwagon to nowhere. And that is what we've been on for 20 years. I would even venture to say that in the first tenure of Obasanjo, there was some effort. So, as we think about 2023, let us understand that we do not yet have the dividends of democracy. Let us understand that it is the task of all our political leaders to educate those they want to vote for them on the ideas that can change their lives and how they are the candidates that can bring those ideas into reality. The absence of ideas and ideology is a very big problem in Nigeria's politics. And if it is not solved in 2023, it will not be different from 2019, it will not be different from 2015 or 2011. This is the time to make the break. This is the time. So let us look for those with ideas. Let us look for those who are committed to a constitutional restructuring of Nigeria that can make Nigeria work for all of us. No victor, no vanquished. That's the kind of restructuring we need. We don't need a restructuring that is for some and against some. No. We have to do what is called manufacturing consensus. And this requires a leader that has political will. I believe it was Hakim that said it. Has the political will to take tough decisions and tough actions. The will and the ability to mobilize consensus. To call my people and say, my people, come, let us discuss. This is where we're going. This is why we're going there. This is why it's beneficial for all of us. And so in the discussion on restructuring, if anybody is reluctant, if they are big enough or strong enough, we should be able to say, okay, we can understand your reservation. Can we do it this way in practice? In practice may mean that when it comes to fiscal federalism, that there may be a transition period when all the states and all the regions fall back to having their own revenues. You cannot say that the oil or the nickel in Kaduna or the oil in the Niger Delta or the gold in Zamfara, that they all belong to the federal government and you call yourself a federal republic. That is an oxymoron. Go and educate yourself about what federalism means. Nigeria cannot be a federal, quote-unquote, name, but in reality a unitary state, and say that we want progress. We must go back to the fundamentals. The oil in Alaska belongs to Alaska. It doesn't belong to Washington. But what we do in recognition of the fact that we are one country is that the revenue from that oil, the state or the region that has it will keep some of it and contribute some of it to the center. Because we all have common services that we all benefit from. That's what federalism is. So it is time in Nigeria, and for us all as Nigerians, to start telling ourselves the truth. Let us have these uncomfortable conversations. Let us sit down and renegotiate Nigeria. Don't listen to anybody that tells you that Nigeria is non-negotiable. Anybody that tells you that is not being honest. Because every country is constantly being negotiated. In Canada, when Quebec wanted to secede, there was a long drawn-out negotiation. They settled it with Canada remaining Canada, but they gave certain special rights to Quebec, including the right for French to become a second language of Canada officially. This is how civilized people discuss things and resolve them, for God's sake. You shouldn't feel it must be by fire, by force. You cannot legislate happiness. You cannot legislate unity. In 2023, we must elect a leader that has these understandings, the wisdom, the large heart to be able to bring people together, and the ideas to be able to move this country forward. Enough of the politics of dumbness. Thank you.